around here. Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us today with Mr. Rob Fabian, Chief Operating Officer of Vaya Space. Rob, as I was saying earlier, we're so glad that you've embraced our humble museum, that we celebrate the birth of America's space age in its delivery room. And right here in Brevard County, we have our own rocket company with a lot of 3D printed materials. You're going to tell us all about that. But your impression of our museum?
No, I've been fascinated walking around the museum. It's like stepping back in time and getting an insider's view into the beginning of the space age here. Walking around, seeing the actual consoles that were operated in. My start with the space industry in the 80s was just early enough that some of this stuff looks familiar to me. So I really, in some of these places, particularly in the sequencer room, I felt like I was there. So this has been a great place to see a perspective you don't usually see in museums.
Well, thank you, Rob. We're grateful that you're here and support us in many ways. Of course, we got a beautiful green screen of the Florida Peninsula here. Things are happening here at an unbelievable space. I moved here in my early retirement because I for this museum, I knew they needed boots on the ground. But my gosh, I've seen hundreds of rocket launches in 5 years, where I saw none, for most of my life.
Yeah, and it's speeding up. So you're going to see more and more of them, both from the established companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and the big guys, and also from the little guys. Just recently, SLD-45 announced release of 4 of the historic launch pads to 5 separate small companies. So several of us, Vaya Space included, are now have our home to be right here on Cape Canaveral for launch.
And which pad is Vaya Space going to assume?
Vaya Space is going to be on pad LC-13 along with Phantom Space. It's a 2-pad area, so we're going to share the two and swap back and forth. We actually have a really good relationship with Phantom Aerospace. Mark Lester, their COO, and I are friends. So I think we're really seeing a change, a growth in the commercial operations here at the Space Coast, where we're going to see more than one company operating off a pad.
And that's something that was set up through the Obama administration and the great director Bob Cabana at the Space Center, privatizing these rocket pads. And I know a lot of you people know each other in this industry for decades. And now that you got a little gray hair and you knew each other when you were younger, I mean, how exciting is this for you to really see the rocket renaissance happening?
Oh, this has been something, it's always been right around the corner my whole career. I mean, I started in the space business as a space operations officer in the late 80s. And we were always talking about what was about to happen in commercial space, and it was always about to happen. And now it's happening.
Yeah, it is happening. We're going to put a little, what went one too far there? There we go. We're going to call our Fridays Future Fridays on Stay Curious, because those Stay Curious for a couple years has really lived in the past, celebrating what's on the calendar in front of us. And of course, 3 decades of wonderful shuttle missions. We need to look to the future, and with people like Rob, we want to have Future Fridays to talk about the rocket renaissance, bring some of your engineers in here. We've had a couple of your young engineers in here before, and really embrace what's happening at Cape Canaveral and Cape Space Force, as well as Cape Kennedy. It's hard to keep up with, quite frankly.
It is, with everything that's going on. And I want to put in a plug for those young engineers. I could not be prouder of the team of folks that we have here. There was a period of time, maybe a decade or so ago, where it looked like the space industry was aging out. And I will tell you that's not the case now. I've got a group of young 20-somethings and a couple of bordering on 30-something engineers that are just phenomenal and just as dedicated to what we're doing here as anybody has been in the operations here. And it's not just Vaya. This is across the industry.
Yeah, I've been in your facility, and some of those, I wonder if they had their driver's license, in there in front of those stuff in there. But it's just, it is amazing. It was the same way with the Apollo era, though. You saw very few 40-year-olds in the control rooms.
Right.
All right. Marty Winkle, my co-producer, was in his 20s working on the lunar Grumman lunar module there.
Early 20s.
Early 20s, yeah, Marty there. A shout out to Marty there. We got Selvin Trotter learning our Streamlabs here. Thank you, Selvin. He's been a big asset to our museum, and he found his role there helping us at Shuttle Fest at the front end there. Wanted to brag a little bit about, tell you the background of Rob Fabian. He is the COO of Vaya Space, a cutting-edge technology company in 3D produced rockets and engines that are competing for payloads in low Earth orbit. And when you say competing, it seems like there's plenty for everybody, Rob.
There is. The demand is huge. That's why we got into the size class that we're in the small rocket industry. Depending on whose projections you believe, whether the ones we've done internally by pulling constellation approvals or some of the professional research firms, there's somewhere between 60 to 100,000 small satellites that need to be launched in the next 10 years. It boggles the mind.
Did you hear 60,000 satellites need to be launched in the next 10 years? And what are those satellites going to be doing?
It runs the gamut from communications networks, and they're a major player in that. But also Earth resources, Earth observation, research. Some of it's very specialized observation. We've got one company we're working with out of Brazil that is very specifically using hyperspectral imagery to track plastic pollutants in the Amazon River and off the coast of Brazil.
Wow, amazing. And there's companies, if you want to get a new roof in Florida, what are you going to be looking at? You're going to be looking at a satellite image that that roof company is supplying you, showing you where you're from 200 miles up, a satellite that they've paid time on or whatever to see that, correct?
Absolutely. And it's very much become a if you build it, they will come. As launch costs are going down, more and more companies are finding things that they can do in orbit, which means more and more satellites that need to go up, which drives people to reduce costs even further.
And we're going to talk about something that you are president of, the Space Force Association, that pops into my mind because we need some rules and some standards to set so we don't have a polluted low Earth orbit that suddenly is clogged with satellites running into each other.
So I'm the president of the Florida chapter.
Oh, okay.
So Bill Wolf is our national president. But yeah, the Space Force Association is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that exists to support the men and women of the United States Space Force in their professional lives and what they're doing, and also to educate and do outreach to the community on what space power brings to our nation, and provide professional education and development for those same guardians.
Well, it's just you're going to talk more about that. You can join. You don't have to be in the military or anything to do that. We're talking to a retired Air Force Colonel, Rob Fabian here, who's the nephew of shuttle astronaut John Fabian. We'll talk about that in a moment. You've got more than 25 years in military space operations for the Air Force's IBMs. And us baby boomers grew up with IBM intraballistic missiles, all right, not the company IBM, but thinking about interballistic missile fleets. And there was a whole fleet across our Midwest called the MX missiles, silos. You were involved with that.
I worked with those. I was, as a captain, I was the maintenance officer overseeing all 50 of the what we called Peacekeeper, what were originally called MX missiles, deployed in Wyoming. So they were put into old Minuteman silos at the time, so they moved away from the rail mobile system. And then I've also led field maintenance on Minuteman as well, both there at F.E. Warren and in Minot, North Dakota, where I was a squadron commander over a maintenance squadron.
Now, the Minuteman were solid rockets, right?
Well, both Minuteman and Peacekeeper are solid.
Okay, because I saw the plans for the Atlas rocket and fueling tanks and all that stuff. I've seen the underground schematics. Oh, my God. What a nightmare that would have been.
No, that was a logistics nightmare to accomplish, and it was a timing nightmare. The reason we went to the solid fuel ICBMs was speed of response.
Gotcha.
And so...
and I know you got a lot of secrets you can't tell us being in the military like that, but is this, do we still have these missiles active?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There are 3 wings of ICBMs left in the U.S., one in Montana, one in North Dakota, and one in Wyoming with missiles in Wyoming, Colorado, and Nebraska. And they're all Minuteman IIIs, and they're in the process of being recapitalized. So the Air Force is building a new Sentinel ICBM that's going to replace the Minuteman III.
Well, I sleep better at night knowing that. I hope Carlton Bailey does, our good friend watching. I bet Chris Callie's watching today too. I want to stay curious. I know a little bit about Mr. Rob Fabian here, I know he's as comfortable on the machine shop floor as you are sitting in a Department of Defense meeting with a bunch of decorated war heroes around.
Yeah, I did spend some time in the Pentagon as a space policy analyst for the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, running in and out of the executive office building and trying to corral this thing we call the interagency, that is the whole of the U.S. federal government in how we respond to space.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting experience. I'd much rather run a startup.
Right. Well, we're going to hear about how this startup come about by another astronaut. But where'd you grow up? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
That's actually an interesting question because I didn't.
You didn't grow up?
Well, no, I didn't have a single place. I'm second generation Air Force.
Okay.
So my dad, both of his brothers, including my Uncle John, the shuttle astronaut, were all commissioned Air Force officers. And my dad was still on active duty when I was commissioned. So I'd never really stayed any place more than 5 years in my life until I got here to Florida and the Space Coast.
That's I people like you like that. I find you very interesting because you had to make friends fast, and then you had to leave friends, and sort of how did that build you up as a man or your character as a person?
I think what it did to me is it made me what I like to call a high functioning introvert.
Okay.
I am an introvert. I'm relatively self-contained when I need to be.
Yeah.
But I love being with people. I love being out and about, so I can do both. It's an odd story, but when I was going through my military career, if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality tests that rate you in varying scales.
I'm not, but
basically there's four axes that they rate you on what your personality type is. I'm what's called an INTJ. That's an introvert, thinking, intuitive, thinking, judging. And when I was going through Command and Staff College, one of the things they taught us was that the DoD had done a study, and the optimal personality type for a general officer was an ENTJ, an extroverted, intuitive, thinking, judging. And I watched in my Air Force career as I tested this. When I started as a second lieutenant, I was a very high I, very high N, very high T, very high J. And over the course of 25 years, the NTJ stayed where they were, and the I got lower and lower and lower until as a colonel, I was almost over the line into being an E. And then I retired, and I went right back up again.
Okay.
So it's flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility. Yeah, I can relate to some of that. Though I'm quite an extrovert, I do have an inferiority complex at times over things, and people don't really understand that about people that are used to being in front of the public and so forth. We make it look too easy, I think, in a way there. Well, before we get carried on here too much longer with Rob Fabian here, we wanted to give a shout out to 4 astronauts having their birthday on April 28th. These juxtapose in time. Several times a year we have 3 or 4 astronauts born the same time. So I guess it's good to be Leos. Or no, they wouldn't be Leos or whatever. John Crichton is 80 years old today. He's in the generation with your uncle, John Fabian. Jay Apt, 77 years old, or 70, he's 74 years old today. Paul Lockhart, born 1956, 67. And Leo Eilharts of the ESA is also born today. You see where they were born. Quite interesting there. All astronauts I have never met. We enjoy going out to the astronaut encounter and meeting astronauts out there. So maybe we'll look forward to them. I posted that on Facebook. So maybe you share April 28th with an astronaut birthday there. Through this in here, as I know that you're a rocket scientist, and just kind of fun to look at 1960 PowerPoint.
It actually doesn't look that off from some of the rooms inside of Vaya Space right now.
I've seen your boards like that.
It's a whiteboard instead of a chalkboard, but there's some things you can't replace.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I noticed that when I was in there, and and respected the fact that we're going to take any pictures or anything on the board there. But yeah, you got some really cool things going up there, and you're going like that. You still talk like that. You have to talk in front of each other. It's a great thinking process.
Yeah, that collaboration is key to any sort of serious engineering project design like this. We like to talk about the quiet genius who sits by himself and invents everything. That doesn't happen in real life. It's an iterative process between multiple people.
Yeah, it is. It is. Everything is today. If you're not open-minded to share your ideas, you're going to get bit by something down the line, maybe, because there's so much to think about.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about working at Vaya is we've really built a culture of meritocracy of ideas. So it doesn't matter what your particular specialty is. If your idea makes sense and is right, it's going to get listened to. And we've had cases where technicians have come up with solutions to engineering problems that we've run into, or somebody whose specialty is guidance, navigation, and control, which is all math and some electronics, are suggesting things to the propulsion guys that fix a problem, or vice versa.
Well, we're going to get into Rob Fabian and Vaya Space here in just a second, but the name Fabian, this baby boomer can't help but tease you a little bit with this heartthrob of the 1960s, Fabian Fortes there, okay? You remember him, don't you? There, whoop, I'm going backwards there. There he is with Ed Sullivan on there. This was a heartthrob. He's 80 years old, by the way, still alive when I looked him up on there. Of course, his first name is Fabian, like Elvis, one of the first people that had a single name out there. His hits were Hound Dog Man, and his biggest hit was Tiger. And he was in a lot of movies there. So
I took quite a lot of harassment over that name for when I was at the Air Force Academy.
No, did you?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, you can't live it down still in there. But that's our way of educating some baby boomers out there about old-timey things on there. But here's your Uncle John. He was STS mission specialist on the STS-7 with Sally Ride in 51G, 2 missions. Marty, we've seen him out at the Space Center. He does a great talk out there. I had a whole box of lithographs of his that if you want them, sir, we've got them. He goes, I got 3 boxes in my garage. Okay.
I'm sure he does.
But so how was it to grow up with Uncle John as an astronaut?
It really sent me on the path that where I am today. Before he got selected as an astronaut, and I was only 10, so I mean it's not like it was a major life shift. Everybody shifts a lot at that age. I wanted to be a detective. Hardy Boys, 3 Investigators. That was my focus in life. I was going to be a detective like my grandpa.
Grandpa was a detective for who?
It was a police officer in I think Omaha, Nebraska, and then he was a professor of criminology at first University of Washington and then University of Texas Corpus Christi.
Okay.
So he's one of the major founders of the National Association of Criminologists.
What's his name?
Felix Fabian.
Felix Fabian.
Felix Fabian Sr. My dad.
Those you CSI guys out there, you got a CSI connection there.
So,
well, back to your Uncle John there. He grew up in Olympia, Washington area, right? Or no, born in Goose Creek, Texas, which I do know where that is. Pullman, Washington.
Yeah, that was when my grandpa was a college professor there.
Okay.
So he was really the reason I got interested in space. It got me thinking about it, and I decided I wanted to be an astronaut. I mean, if he could do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
I tried. I met the astronaut selection board for the Air Force 3 times, but I never made it through the final selection round.
Wow.
But given the quality and caliber of people that they have sent forward for astronaut, I don't feel bad about it. There's some amazing people.
Yes, it is. And one final comment about your uncle there. He's quite an environmentalist. He's made an impact in that part of our country.
Yeah.
In there, and we saw him back in the right after Christmas, I think. He was at the Space Center. So look forward to seeing him again. He gives a lot of time to the community.
Yeah, I think he's coming down. I'm not sure exactly when, but sometime in the next couple of months, he's coming back for another run.
Well, we'd love to take you and your uncle out to dinner when that happens in there. So, well, let's get into Vaya Space here and show what you look like dressed up there. Okay, on your website page there, and so tell us a little bit about the company overview here.
Sure. Well, Vaya Space is, like it says on the side, we're privately owned space launch company. We're focusing on our Vortex hybrid rocket engine. So I mean, most of your audience probably knows what a hybrid rocket engine is, but for those who don't, you've got your traditional solid rockets like the ICBMs that I worked on before, like the shuttle's solid rocket boosters. The oxidizer and fuel are all mixed together into a single solid mass. And once you start them burning, they're going to burn until they're done. Most of what you see in the commercial world these days is a liquid bipropellant. So liquid fuel, liquid oxidizer, mix the two in a combustion chamber and burn them. For us, we have a liquid oxidizer, but a solid fuel. So the liquid oxidizer is introduced into a cylinder, if you will, of solid fuel material and burned. So what we get is we get better energy density, closer to a solid, but we get all the throttleability and control that you get out of a liquid, because we can control how much oxidizer flows in and out. We can shut it off and turn off the engine and start it back up again at a later time.
Oh, okay.
But hybrids are notorious for being unstable. They have combustion instabilities, they have variable thrust, and they're relatively inefficient engines. We fixed that. So we have two patented technologies, and I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but
Need the next slide there.
Yeah,
I'm going backwards there. There we go. How were you founded?
really, we came out of a confluence of the technology, but we trace our genesis back to our current chairman of the board and prior CEO and president, Sid Gutierrez. So Sid was a shuttle astronaut with 2 missions, both as pilot and mission commander. Mm-hmm. And after his time in shuttle, he left thinking there had to be a safer way to do this than sitting on top of a bomb.
Yeah, right.
And he went looking for hybrid technologies because hybrids are unique in that when they fail, they tend to stop combustion. In our case, we call it a fail-safe rocket. We've proven that our vehicle, if the casing breaks or if you have another mechanical failure in the engine, it simply shuts down. Now, it's still a rocket. You still have pressure in there, so it's not 100% safe, but it's a lot safer than sitting on fully mixing fuel and oxidizer. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of our heritage, if you will, with the company, and he's been a huge influence as we've gone up. And so we named the company, in a sense, after him. When he took off as mission commander, as the first U.S.-born Hispanic shuttle commander, instead of the traditional Godspeed from Capcom, he was wished Vaya con Dios. So we are now Vaya Space, mm-hmm. Go to space.
And that Capcom was our friend Bob Seek.
Yes.
Who was our longtime treasurer of our American Space Museum, and just a great guy, as you well know. I know you, Bob. I know you know Bob. Yeah, we wish Sid Gutierrez well. Hope that he can someday come on our program here. Always a standing invitation to do that.
We'll see if we can set something up. He's here pretty regularly.
Well, good. Yeah, we'd love to have him on there, even after hours. We could tape it on there. So, Vaya Space, Vaya con Dios. Who are Vaya Space?
I think we went back a slide.
Oh, we did go back a slide. Yeah, let me go. There's Sid. There we go.
So this is what we're up to these days. We've proven out our Vortex hybrid engine. So we've been burning engines here in the COCO area since 2017. Actually testing within COCO city limits.
Please tell us what you were called.
We were called
People
rocket.
might remember
we were called rocket crafters when we first started out, and we changed from rocket crafters to Vaya Space, one, to honor Sid, but also to recognize a transition in the company. So our first few years here, we were proving out that we could build these rocket engines that we had envisioned, mm-hmm. and that they really did work the way we thought they worked. That we could get the clean, stable combustion that eludes most hybrids. Mm-hmm. About a year. A little more than that ago, we did the final change over to Vaya Space to commemorate our first test flight. So we took a suborbital launch vehicle. We were operating under an FAA waiver, so the altitude was not very impressive. Mm-hmm. Out to Mojave, and we flew it. 3-day launch window, launched on the very first day with 9 test objectives and hit all 9 of them.
Awesome.
So what we set out to do really was prove that our engines performed one way on the test stand, the same in flight. Mm-hmm. And with that in hand, we expanded into designing the Dauntless launch vehicle that you see here on the screen.
Yeah, I kind of remember that a year ago because Mary Baldino, your PR lady there, I was in touch with her, and she was all excited about everybody's out there in Mojave for this test. And
it was a huge
transition. Everything went great, huh?
It did.
Good.
Not without its challenges, as any rocket test is.
Right.
But We got it off the pad the morning of of that first launch window, and it burned exactly the way we expected it to.
Well, here's some of the parameters that Vaya Space is looking at. Their payloads and some details there of your Dauntless rocket.
Yeah, Dauntless it's a two-stage vehicle in its current configuration. This is the Block 1, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get further in. Taking about 400 kilograms up to low Earth orbit, depending on what altitude and what orbit you're going to.
400 kilograms times 2.2 pounds, so that's almost 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Huh?
And that's right in the initial sweet spot that we see for these small satellites. Most of them are in the 500 kilogram and below range.
Okay.
And then, so we're fueled with our hybrid Vortex hybrid engines, burning both liquid oxygen and high density polyethylene. That's something that I find fascinating with this. We set out to find a plastic that we could burn in a hybrid engine that had the right physical properties for what we wanted to do with the rocket. And we found a way to help clean up the Earth. Because that high density polyethylene that we're burning is 99% post-industrial waste product. So this is
just like your plastic drink bottle.
yeah, the caps off the bottle, milk jugs, any one of a number of consumer products are high density polyethylene. And so we take what would have gone into the waste stream and use it to make the fuel grains that we're burning to get to orbit. For the Block 1, it's about 7,000 pounds of plastics that will be taken out of the waste stream for every launch.
Now, how tall is Dauntless? People like knowing that. The overall height of the rocket.
Yeah, it's about a little over 20 meters.
Okay. 20 meters, that's 60 feet tall.
Approximately.
So it's a
And
very small, compact rocket. Then.
It is. It's targeting the small satellite launch industry. So we're in the same ballpark that our friends at Pad 13 Phantom are in, but also Rocket Labs, Relativity, Astra we're in, although Relativity and Astra are both moving to larger vehicles. One of the things that we've seen in here as we did our analysis is it's difficult to make the business case close for a liquid bipropellant with the complexity that come with it at this size class. I mean, Elon Musk's original business plan for SpaceX, the Falcon 1, was this size class.
Okay.
And they really could never make the economics work. They pulled off the physics on it, which was an amazing story in and of itself. But they could never make the economics work, and they moved to the Falcon 9. We believe we can make the economics work.
Awesome. So we looked at the architecture here. And
If I can back up, the one thing I do want to point out that's a little different for us. When you see our vehicle in the picture, it looks like we have a bunch of strap-on boosters on the
that's
side.
the red on the side.
That's the red on the side. Those are not strap-ons. Those are the actual engines. So rather than having the traditional fuel tank, oxidizer tank, and engine underneath, we have the central core, that green central core, that is a LOX tank, and 6 hybrid engines on the outer rim, all feeding off that LOX tank. So that allows us to shorten the overall length, reduce structural mass, and does some good things for our center of gravity and center of pressure in flight.
Good point, Rob. Don't be fooled by the height of a rocket. It makes it powerful when 2/3 of that height is just fuel tanks and the oxidizer, right? So you're just putting, instead of the engines underneath, you're putting them around the side, and that makes it more compact, easier to transport, probably.
It is.
Type of things like that. So
makes it fit on a more of a DOT standard shed. And then the other interesting thing is those first stage engines, the 6 of them, are identical to the single engine in the second stage.
Okay.
So to get this to orbit, we're only having to qualify one engine design.
Very good.
So
Got to have a graph in there from a rocket scientist.
Yep,
Okay. So
this is our current payload mass estimates for varying inclinations and altitudes. As you can see, at lower altitudes, we're getting upwards of 550 kilograms. And if you're going all the way out to 1,000 kilometers, we're at, or in some cases, below 300 kilograms.
Go that way. And then there's your payload shroud.
Yeah, and for here, we're not doing anything innovative. We're actually just using commercial off-the-shelf technologies, both for payload separation systems as well as the fairings themselves. That's one of the things that we're doing with Vaya Space is we're innovating where innovation makes sense, our engines in particular, but where the industry has already built something that works beautifully for what we want there's no reason to reinvent the wheel.
There you go. Right. If it's off the shelf, fine. Marty, we got a question from one of our Stay Curious watchers today.
Yeah, hang on. Everything just scrolled on me. I got to go find it again.
Okay. You look at those payloads, SpaceX bringing back the first stage is now like 170 times or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think what's talked about enough is bringing the payload or the shrouds back.
Yep.
And that saves a lot of money.
Interestingly, Elon's been on record as saying he's not doing the reuse for money. He's doing it for build speed.
Oh, really?
They can't manufacture the vehicles fast enough to meet the demand that he's seeing.
Do you believe that?
I suspect it's both, but yeah, I do believe it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Since we're in the midst of building our first copies of Dauntless right now, I fully believe that that's part of his driving force.
Huh. Yeah, it's another amazing chapter of reusable spacecrafts that who'd have thunk it, 20 years ago this was going to be the mainstream, or you're not in the game. Now yours is not reusable.
We are not reusable, although we like to say that we believe we're going to be recoverable. So that one of the things we're testing on our first flight, we're going to go pull that first stage out of the ocean. There are some key components in there, injectors, nozzles, that we think we can reuse. And so we'll pull them out, examine them, test them, qualify them. And if we can do that, that will also speed us up and we'll be able to reuse those parts.
Well, what you can't use, maybe we could put in a display here at our American Space Museum of
Absolutely.
the future things in there. Marty, did you find the question?
No, Mark, I think he deleted his question.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we got people watching today. We're enjoying Rob Fabian here. He's a real rocket scientist, has been involved in rocketry all his life, including the MX missiles deployed across our fruited plain. Did you shoot off those STs rockets as a kid in the backyard?
Absolutely. I never did before my uncle got selected as an astronaut. But yes, I've lost count of exactly how many STs I shot up, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but I built a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher for it that I could carry around and shoot horizontally.
Okay.
I was living in West Texas, outside of Austin at the time when my dad was there with the Air Force, so we had huge amounts of pasture for me to go play in, and yeah.
Creative. So a few payloads of mice and other animals, maybe. Suborbital missions you've worked on there. Well, here's the Dauntless Block 2, your next generation.
Yeah, I mentioned that we were doing a Block 2. So we view this as a spiral development. What we're launching in the Block 1 is not what we'll be launching 2 years later. The Block 2 is probably not what we'll be launching 2 or 3 years later after that, as we continue to improve. The Block 2 actually is a 3-stage vehicle. So we're already doing the design work on this now with 2 different classes of engines. So the first stage is identical between the 2 blocks. But the second and third stages are using different sized engines, the same in the second and third. But this should get us approximately 1,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit.
So you're looking at the future business that's out there.
Yep.
The
the business is looking at us. We've got, I'm not, it's changing so much, I'm not entirely sure how much in the way of backlog we have, but we have all of our 2024, 2025, and most of 2026 projected launches already contracted.
That right. So, without giving away the secrets and stuff, who are some of the, who wants to put satellites in space and for what reasons?
We're dealing with a bunch of different organizations, everything from small university research satellites. Actually, our very first customer is a university consortium that's putting up a satellite to do radio astronomy in the bands that don't get through the Earth's atmosphere. We've got several brokers that aggregate CubeSat launches that have contracts with us now, and several small sat companies that are putting up constellations, both for communication and for Earth imagery and ISR. The Brazilian company I was mentioning before is one of the early ones.
Interesting. Of course, you have a big military background there. Does the military have use for these smaller satellites?
Well, absolutely. The whole rapid replenishment of on-orbit assets is a big deal for the Space Force. We do not currently have any DoD contracts, but we're certainly not opposed to taking them.
Well, I'm sure you'll get some there with the wonderful people you have. Here's a map showing the. Okay, we got Marty's just. Those of you watching for a Falcon 9 launch, they've moved it to 5:42. All right, so we might get done today, and then the Falcon Heavy scheduled after 7:30 tonight. What do you think about that, Rob? That they want to pull off 2 launches within 2 hours of each other.
It's like living in the future. They've got enough infrastructure there to do it. They've got the personnel to do it. And
They do. So SCS, the big contract for the big rocket launch, they're not saying, "Hey, wait a minute, are you giving us enough attention for our launch?" Or
I don't think so.
Okay.
From what I've been observing, and I'll tell you, I love watching them. I live up on North Merritt Island.
yeah,
My house rumbles every time anything launches. It's wonderful.
yeah, it is. It is. These noisy rockets around here really keeping people up at night. And
I thought I was going to miss the jet noise when I moved here because I retired at Hill Air Force Base, which is an
okay,
F-35 base, and F-35s are not quiet.
okay.
But no, it's been wonderful.
Well, it's like Marty, my co-producer, says, and he's seen 1,000 launches. Every one is different. You never know what it's going to look like, and then of course there's that big risk that might not go right. But I've seen, I don't even know how many, over 300 launches in 5 years. It's unbelievable. And
They were well over 60 last year.
yeah, and they're going for 90 this year.
Yep.
And
when you talk to the companies out there, our competitors, we're all talking in the 40s and 50s a year per company. That's what we see the demand. Now the question is, how do we execute? And the folks both at Kennedy and at Cape Canaveral have put a lot of brain power into how they're going to support that kind of a launch.
well, and tell us also, the 45th Space Plane
Right.
there is the real ultimate authority
Yeah.
on the launch profile out over the ocean, correct?
Absolutely. SLD 45 has been a key partner to us going through all this. And I know General Purdy has a definite vision for how he wants almost airport-like operations to go here while
Yeah.
maintaining public safety.
Yeah.
So they've
General Purdy over the space wing here, and yeah, he's active in the community. He gets out, talks to the Chamber of Commerce, things that I'm involved in, and a good guy. They need that. They need a front man out there to let them know what's going on out here. You're spread out a little bit around our great country there.
well, yes and no. I mean, right now we're here.
Yeah, right now you're
So
here.
our manufacturing facilities, our design facilities, our test facilities, and our first launch facilities are all here in Cocoa. But we are looking to expand to other locations in the near future. In particular, we need someplace we can launch into polar orbits from, and you just can't do that energy efficiently from here at the Cape.
As we were talking before the show, to go polar orbit, you got to launch and make a dog leg
Right.
because you can't go directly over the Carolinas, for example. You have to go south, but you can't go over Miami, so you got to kind of go out over the ocean and hang a right, and that's a lot of technology to do that.
Yep, and it eats up a lot of your Delta V, the energy in your launch.
Yeah, SpaceX has done it 3 or 4 times now,
Yeah.
incredibly, with their Starlink satellites there.
It's not impossible. It just reduces your payload volume, or payload mass.
Well, here's some things that are in the news about Vaya Space, and we want you to, like I said, they're our hometown rocket company here. There's a new exit off 95 that goes to Port St. John. That's just you're about 2 miles south of there. And
It's been a banner year for us. Obviously, the one I'm most excited about is the allocation on Launch Complex 13. So we've been working very closely with SLD 45 as they optimized who got which site and how it was going to be used. So we're very happy to be granted access to that site. But it's been a few other things. The International Green Award. Actually, my chief propulsion engineer got to go to London and go to visit the House of Commons to receive this award for our technology's contribution to the effort of protecting our environment.
very good. That's cool. And let's just mention that you are in a area of Florida in this county that's being developed. There's some infrastructure around there. not too far from a big Walmart and grocery stores and so forth. But you're going to be able to test your rockets in there. You've
Well,
got enough land. And,
We have enough land for us to test single engines.
Mhm.
So we're in discussions with a couple of locations here local. Nothing I can release right now to do vertical testing of the whole engine stack, so the whole first stage. But the single engines, yes, we have a location right here in Cocoa.
Okay. Well, I live near there. I hope to hear it roaring there one night.
I'm
so
sure you
forth in
will.
there. So that'll be good on there.
Yeah.
And those of you in the area, they're right behind a new restaurant called the Pint and Pistol.
Yep.
Back in there, and I understand that's a nice place to go into.
Delicious food, and you'll see plenty of rocket scientists there for lunch most days.
Good. We'll check that out there. Via Space, going green. It's kind of an interesting logo. I like it. Of course, the V vector. There's something to that where you've got the line on the right V.
Yeah, that's sort of an Easter egg there, going back to our military space heritage that we all share, going back to the early ICBM days. So that's a stretched out delta, that deltoid symbol. You'll see it in Space Force logos. The Air Force used it in Air Force Space Command and other space logos, but that's the official DoD symbol for a space unit or a space vehicle. And so we're seeing it taking off on that right-hand leg of the V.
Okay. Very cool. I had a sticker. I think I still have the sticker on my Jeep there. But if you're crazy about space, like most of us, if you're watching this show, you are, and you know about the Space Force. Well, there's a Space Force Association, and Rob is the president of the state chapter, you said here?
Yes.
I actually ran into your folks at the Space Com, the Space Congress, formerly called the Space Congress, a month ago. That was a big eye-opener for me, seeing the trade show for space industry type of thing there. Run into Scooter Altman, astronaut Scooter. What are you doing here? He goes, I own a company with 800 employees. I'm trying to find work for them. And, that's, and then, so they had a lot of great representatives there. I said, how do you join all that stuff? They said you were involved. So tell us about it, Rob.
Well, as I mentioned at the very start here, we're an independent 501c3 organization that exists to support the U.S. Space Force. So most military services, all of them here in the U.S., have these sort of charitable organizations that exist to help support the troops, help spread understanding of what they do and what they endure to the general populace. And there wasn't one when Space Force stood up. And so several of us were retired Air Force officers who would have been Space Force officers if we'd stayed in, decided that we needed to fix that. And so I wasn't one of the original founders. I jumped in not too long afterwards. But it's been building for about 2 years now, standing up at the national level and then starting to form at the state level. So that our state our organization was only formed last year in 2022. And so we've started standing it up, elected our officers, brought in membership, and started holding events. So SpaceCom was a key part of it. We were there at SpaceCom sort of waving the flag and doing the educational mission, but we were also a very strong part of the Space Mobility Conference that SLD 45 held the day before SpaceCom. And we're intending to support that significantly again next year. That's one of the core things we do. So we provide support for the men and women of the Space Force, but we also focus on doing research, informing people, and advocating for U.S. space power.
Yeah, there I have a slide. There's a slide up there. I had up there, pointing that out there. Research, inform, and advocate.
Yep. And that's in support of the Guardians, but also space professionals as a whole. And then to Congress and to the general public, helping people to understand what the Space Force is and what it isn't, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there.
Well, I'll put aside some of those misconceptions, and I want to say this, that this is a new branch of service created 3 years ago. As a military guy, what'd you feel about that? Did we need a new branch of service directly for space? And
my reaction was, it's about time. I was at headquarters, Air Force Space Command, right around the 2000, just prior to 2001 and 9/11, and we were pushing towards this. We were laying the groundwork, the intellectual and the legal frameworks necessary to do something like this back then. And then 9/11 happened, and our national priorities rightfully changed. And so as things came back onto a more even keel, this came back up. I love the Air Force. I spent my career in the Air Force. My folks, my father, my uncles were all Air Force officers. But the reason the Air Force separated from the Army was because Army officers fundamentally did not understand air power. And my experience in the Air Force was that pilots who ran the Air Force, rightfully so, fundamentally did not understand space power. There were exceptions. I actually worked on the Chief of Staff, General John Jumper's personal staff for a while at the Pentagon. He got it, but he was the exception to the rule. And so what we really needed was control of our own doctrine, our own training, and our own budgets. I saw many times in the Pentagon space programs raided and killed to fund aircraft programs. And you know, I don't say that maliciously. The folks running the Air Force have an Air Force to keep up. But space needed its independent voice in order to get done what it can do.
And the soldiers are called the Guardians. And that's kind of cool because I grew up in Ohio and we had to rename the Cleveland Indians. Now they're the Guardians. But fitting name because that's what they're doing. They're guarding our country with the canopy of infrastructure from space in there.
People don't always realize just how dependent we are on space infrastructure, both in the civilian world and definitely in the military world.
The SFA there. Here's one of the logos of the Star Command. Yep. They were kind of criticized for ripping off Star Trek looking logos, but logos are logos, and these are some cool logos.
I always laugh about that because Star Trek ripped off the Air Force.
Oh, did they? Okay.
That Delta was in use in the 1940s.
Okay, there you go. Trekkies.
Military space had it first. That said, I don't think there's a Guardian out there who minds wearing something that's reminiscent of Starfleet and the Federation. There's a little bit of the Star Trek geek in all of us.
Absolutely. Going to say hi to Jim McDade out there. Thank you for watching, Jim. He's see him on Space Hipsters a lot. Cynthia Rossi's watching. Dave Stangy's up in Michigan. Robert Law is enjoying his cocktail and his big screen TV in Dundee, Scotland. Rob.
Nice.
And Bennett Scarborough's watching. Hello, Hazel Banks. Jack Anthony's staying curious today. Christina.
I got to give a shout out to Jack.
You know Jack? All right.
I've known Jack all the way back to my cadethood.
Oh,
one of my professors, and there is not a more steely-eyed space expert out there than Jack Anthony.
Well, we'd love to have him on Stay Curious with us.
He would be fantastic for you.
Well, you've done a fantastic job. We've really enjoyed this with you today. Christina Smith's watching. Doug Forrest is a talented artist. Carlton Bailey and Bill Whiting has invited us up to watch the launch today at his little condo. And Chris Calley, maybe there'll be a launch we can invite you up to. Chris is a fabulous artist. His dad did the Man on the Moon stamp on Apollo, and Chris did the 20th
I remember him from Space Fest.
Oh, okay, yeah. The
fascinating discussion.
You've been to Space Fest then, and I never was. Yeah. That was a good, fun time, and that's what we hope to have with our Shuttle Fest.
Sorry, Shuttle Fest. I misspoke.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking about the one you
met Chris at Shuttle Fest. Yeah, you sure did. Tom UCX watching. Okay, Marty, thank you. There is a global space university, Rob.
Yes.
And speak to that a little bit. Well, enlighten us.
The Global Space University is something that the Space Force Association is standing up as a way to give professional certifications to people in the space industry, primarily to Space Force, but not only Space Force. And so it's in its early stages right now. But I think you're going to see more and more of that as the years go by.
Yeah, I kind of looked it up a little bit there, and even I could take a course on orbital dynamics or something like that, orbital mechanics, I mean.
Absolutely.
In there, or learn, I think there was even some space history lessons on there.
And for those in the industry right now who think the certifications might be useful for them, but they've already got the experience, they also do certification tests.
Okay, that's a big deal. I know you know Steve Kane,
Yep.
the space tech,
Mm-hmm.
and Steve's a good friend of mine, and that's all they do is certifications
Yep.
and stuff on there.
I worked
So.
very closely with him with the Space Coast Consortium Apprenticeship Program.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Yeah, I love Steve. He's the only guy I know that has a building named after him. There's a building in, where I want to say Idaho or Iowa where he grew up.
I didn't know that. I'm going to have to give him a hard time about that now.
I'll look it up for you there. Steve Kane, hope you're watching. We miss you. Shared an office with him when we were at a local place there. Space Force Association is the only organization solely dedicated to the Space Force Guardians and their families. How do I become a member, Rob?
Well, the easiest way is go to our website,
Okay.
ussfa.org. And you don't have to be a Guardian. You don't have to be prior service. Anyone is welcome to join. And then
What's the cost? You know what it costs?
I don't know the cost off the top of my head. I probably should, but
Yeah. We'll look it up and we'll post it on Facebook. We'll see if we can get you some new members here.
and then find the local chapter in your area if there is one. There are more popping up all the time. For here in Florida, the Florida chapter generally operates out of the Space Coast, but last month we had our monthly meeting over in Tampa. So we will be coming potentially to a location near you, and find what you can do to help, to learn more yourself, and also to reach out to the community to help understand space power and space operations in general, and what you can do to help the Guardians.
And as the Space Force division of our military is new, so are these clubs. So you're getting on the ground level there.
Absolutely.
Those of you that are interested, and they have chapters around the country,
Yep.
right? So go to the website. You can see one near you.
Right. And if there isn't one, talk to the vice president over your region and you can form one.
All right.
That's how I got roped into being the president.
And I think some of our Stay Curious watchers, we have some solar system ambassadors out there and other people active in
Yep.
communicating. That'd be a perfect fit, wouldn't it?
It would. And for those of you who are not in the U.S., there are overseas chapters as well.
Sweet. All right. Well, Rob, I've really enjoyed this.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, my pleasure. Hope you had some fun there. I hope you all learned something about our hometown rocket company there. Look how beautiful your logo looks there. I just created a new
that's
image
nice.
for you guys there with the peninsula there, right? And there, Marty, how's our Streamlabs today? Everybody enjoy our program?
It sure looks like it.
Sure looks like it. Okay, we hope so. Well, thank you, Marty. It being Friday, we've just knocked down 804 episodes of Stay
Wow.
Curious.
Congratulations.
In
That's
4
amazing.
years. Yeah, it's been a passion for all of us here at the American Space Museum, and I couldn't thank our executive director Karan Conklin more for supporting my crazy ideas to do things. You met Karan, and
Yep.
and she's been a wonderful force of pulling our team together.
Yeah, you guys have got a great team here.
Well, appreciate that. We got great STEAM education going on here, and looking forward to doing more things with Vaya Space. And
Absolutely.
we'll probably have down the works. We'd love to have an open house here for you and that sort of thing down the line, Rob. Is there something I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our
No, I think
listeners here?
we hit the big things, and we're coming up on the end of the hour. I do want to ask you, do you hold or let people hold meetings here? Because Space Force Association is looking for places to hold our monthly meetings. That's not a brew pub where we usually meet.
Right. Well, absolutely. We'd welcome that up to Space Force. The Brevard Astronomical Society meets here once a month, and we can certainly fit you in. We love having, we've had Chamber of Commerce meetings group here, tourism groups, because of our ambience and so forth. We welcome that, Rob. We certainly do. And we've got a kitchen. They can have cocktails, whatever they want here to enjoy it. That'd be a great fit here for sure.
Yeah, let's talk offline about that, because I think we'd love to have one of our monthly meetings this year here.
Oh, well, we'd love that. Well, everybody out there, we're so glad that you joined us today, learned a little bit about Vaya Space. Again, I thank you, Rob Fabian, for being here, and I learned a lot, and I'm so excited about this company to see what they're going to do and things they're going to launch right here on our Space Coast. So, Marty, thank you for a great job today, and until next week, I'm Marquette saying we can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.